The Riverside Country Club was decorated like a winter wonderland. Crystal chandeliers draped with evergreen garlands, white lights twinkling from every corner, a 20-foot Christmas tree in the main ballroom, covered in gold ornaments and red ribbons. And standing in the entrance, wearing a midnight blue dress that caught the light with every movement, was the woman who would make my wife realize she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. "Are you ready?" Victoria asked, adjusting the diamond bracelet on her wrist. Real diamonds, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. "Ready," I said, offering her my arm. We walked into the ballroom together, me in my custom-tailored Tom Ford suit, charcoal gray, perfectly fitted, nothing like the department store clothes I used to wear. Her in that stunning dress, her auburn hair swept up in an elegant style, her presence commanding every eye in the room. And there, near the bar, I saw her. Melissa, my wife. Soon to be ex-wife. She was mid-laugh, holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by her usual crowd, Katie, Jennifer, and Morgan. The women who'd been at our house 6 months ago, the women who'd heard her say those words. "He's replaceable. Honestly, if something happened to him, I'd just find someone better." Melissa's eyes found me, found us. Her champagne glass tilted, liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. Her mouth fell open, and I smiled. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit that hype button to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where you're all watching from. My name is David Richardson, 38 years old, senior accountant at Morrison & Associates, married to Melissa Richardson for 12 years, or at least I thought we were happily married. It was a Tuesday evening in May. I'd come home from work around 6:30, same as always. Our house was in a nice suburb, 4 bedrooms, decent yard, mortgage we could afford. Nothing fancy, but comfortable. I'd walked in through the garage, heard voices from the living room. Melissa had mentioned having some friends over for wine. Her book club friends, though I seriously doubted they ever actually read books. I'd planned to just wave hello and head upstairs to change, give them their space. But as I'd approached the living room, I'd heard my name. "I mean, David's fine, but he's so predictable," Melissa was saying. "Same routine every day. Work, home, dinner, television, bed. He hasn't surprised me in years." I'd frozen in the hallway, just out of sight. Katie's voice. "At least he has a stable job. That's more than I can say about Marcus." Stable. Exactly. Melissa had laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. That's the perfect word. Stable, safe, boring. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd married someone more, I don't know, exciting. "Are you thinking about leaving him?" That was Jennifer, always the dramatic one. "God, no. The divorce would be such a hassle. Besides, where would I go? It's not like I have my own money." "You could get alimony," Morgan had suggested. "Maybe. But honestly, it's easier to just stay. David's harmless. He's replaceable. If something happened to him, I'd just find someone better. But for now, he's adequate. Replaceable." The word had hit me like a physical blow. I'd stood in that hallway, briefcase still in hand, and listened to the woman I'd loved for 12 years casually dismiss me as adequate and replaceable. The conversation had moved on. They'd started talking about some reality show. I'd quietly set down my briefcase, walked back out to my car, and driven to the nearest park. I'd sat there for 2 hours, watching the sunset, processing what I'd heard. Melissa thought I was boring, predictable, replaceable. And you know what? She wasn't entirely wrong. I'd spent 12 years being the perfect husband, the reliable provider, the guy who never complained, never made waves, never asked for anything. I'd let myself become background furniture in my own marriage. But replaceable? No, I wasn't going to accept that. If Melissa thought I was replaceable, then I'd show her what she was losing. I'd become the kind of man she'd wish she'd appreciated, and by the time I was done, she'd be the one who was replaced. I'd gone home around 9 that night. Melissa's friends had left. She'd been in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. "Where were you?" she'd asked, not looking up. "I thought you were coming home hours ago." "Needed to clear my head," I'd said. "Long day." "Well, dinner's in the fridge if you want it. I'm going to bed." "No. I missed you." "No. Are you okay?" Just information and dismissal. I'd eaten alone, cold pasta from a Tupperware container. Melissa's cooking, which used to be pretty good but had gotten lazy over the years. This pasta was overcooked, the sauce from a jar. After dinner, I'd gone to our home office and opened my laptop. Time to take inventory of my life. I'd started with finances. I was a senior accountant. I knew exactly where every dollar went. Joint checking account with about $8,000. Joint savings with $42,000. My 401k had about $215,000. Melissa's retirement account had about $18,000. She'd stopped contributing years ago when she'd quit her job as a dental hygienist to focus on personal projects. Those personal projects seemed to consist mostly of book club, wine, and online shopping. Our house was worth about $400,000. We owed $230,000 on the mortgage. Combined, our assets totaled roughly $600,000. But here's the thing, most people don't know about divorce. In our state, it didn't matter whose name was on what. Everything acquired during the marriage was community property. Split 50-50 in a divorce unless there was a prenup. We didn't have a prenup. So theoretically, if we divorced, Melissa would get $300,000 of assets she'd barely contributed to, unless I was smart about it. I'd spent the next week researching divorce law, consulting with attorneys during my lunch breaks, learning about asset protection, legal separation, and what I could do to prepare. And then I'd made my plan. The first thing I did was join a gym, not Planet Fitness or LA Fitness. I joined Core Performance, a high-end gym in the business district that cost $250 a month. The kind of place with personal trainers, nutritionists, and members who actually looked like they belonged there. I'd hired a trainer named Marcus Chen, former college athlete, certified nutritionist, no-nonsense approach. "What are your goals?" he'd asked during our first session. "I want to look like I belong at this gym instead of looking like an accountant who sits at a desk all day." Marcus had grinned. "I can work with that, but it's going to take commitment. 6 days a week minimum, strict nutrition, no cheating." "I can do that." And I did. 6 in the morning before work, I was at the gym. Weight training, cardio, core work. Marcus pushed me hard. I'd been sore for the first 3 weeks, barely able to walk some days. But I'd kept going. Marcus had also overhauled my diet. High protein, complex carbs, healthy fats, no more processed foods, no more eating whatever Melissa made and pretending it was fine. I'd started meal prepping on Sundays. Grilled chicken, brown rice, steamed vegetables. Boring but effective. Melissa had noticed. "Why are you suddenly obsessed with the gym?" "Health," I'd said simply. "Doctor said my cholesterol was high. Need to make some changes." It wasn't entirely a lie. My cholesterol was slightly elevated at my last physical. But the real reason? I wanted to look in the mirror and see someone worth wanting. Someone who wasn't adequate. Phase 2 had been my wardrobe. I'd gone to a high-end men's clothing store downtown, not the department store where I usually shopped, a real menswear boutique with a personal shopper. "I need a complete wardrobe overhaul," I'd told the consultant, a sharp-dressed man named Stefan. "I've been dressing like someone's boring dad. I want to look like someone who has his life together." Stefan had taken measurements, asked questions about my lifestyle, my budget, my goals. "I'm going to be honest with you," he'd said. "This is going to cost probably $8,000 to $10,000 for a proper wardrobe. Suits, dress shirts, casual wear, shoes, accessories. Are you prepared for that investment?" $8,000. That was a lot of money, but I'd thought about Melissa calling me replaceable, about 12 years of being taken for granted. "Yes," I'd said. "I'm prepared." We'd spent 4 hours selecting clothes. 3 tailored suits, one navy, one charcoal, one light gray. 10 dress shirts in various colors and patterns. 4 pairs of high-quality dress shoes. Casual wear that actually fit properly. A leather jacket. A wool overcoat. A proper watch. Not a Rolex, but a Swiss-made piece that looked expensive without being ostentatious. When it was all tailored and delivered, I'd had a wardrobe that made me look like a completely different person. Melissa had noticed that too. "Why are you suddenly buying expensive clothes? We can't afford this." "It's for work," I'd said. "Need to look more professional. I'm up for senior partner review next year." Also, not entirely a lie. There was a senior partner position potentially opening up, but mostly, I wanted to look like someone who'd moved past being adequate. 3 months into my transformation, I was down 25 pounds. My body fat percentage had dropped from 28% to 18%. I had visible muscle definition in my arms, chest, and abs. My face was leaner, my jawline sharper, my eyes clearer. I looked 10 years younger. Maybe more. The physical changes had been dramatic, but they'd required brutal consistency. Every morning at 5:45 a.m., my alarm went off. By 6 a.m., I was walking into core performance. By 6:15, I was warming up with dynamic stretches and foam rolling. Marcus had structured my workouts in cycles, 4 weeks of heavy compound lifting, squats, deadlifts, bench press, overhead press, then 2 weeks of metabolic conditioning, circuits, supersets, high-intensity intervals, then back to strength work with higher volume. "Your body adapts to everything," Marcus had explained, "so we keep changing the stimulus. Build strength, then build endurance, then build more strength on top of that new endurance base. That's how you get the lean, athletic look instead of just bulky." I'd learned more about fitness in 3 months than I had in my entire life. Learned about progressive overload, about protein timing, about rest and recovery. Learned that sleep mattered as much as the workouts themselves. I'd started sleeping better, partly from the physical exhaustion, partly from the mental clarity that came with having a goal and working toward it. People at work had started noticing around month 2. First, it was subtle. "Hey David, have you lost weight?" Then it became more dramatic. "Wow, you look completely different." Susan from accounting had been the most direct. "David, I have to ask, are you single? Because you look incredible." "Still married," I'd said. "But thank you." "Well, your wife is lucky." I'd thought about Melissa's comment about me being replaceable and hadn't responded. By month 3, the compliments had become routine. Female colleagues I'd worked with for years suddenly wanted to have lunch. Male colleagues wanted to know my workout routine. Even my boss, Richard Morrison, had pulled me aside. "David, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep it up. You've got a new energy about you. Confidence. People notice that." "Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it." "I mean it. You're being considered for senior partner. The transformation you've shown, physically, professionally, it reflects well on the firm." That conversation had happened in early August. By September, I'd been officially promoted to senior partner. Salary increase from $95,000 to $135,000 annually. Better benefits. Corner office. My name on the firm letterhead. Success breeds success, I'd learned. The confidence from physical transformation had spilled over into my professional life. I'd been more assertive in meetings, more willing to take risks, more comfortable pitching new ideas. But physical appearance was only part of the plan. I'd also started working on my social skills and personal development. For years, I'd been the guy who went to work, came home, had dinner with Melissa, watched television, and went to bed. Weekends were yard work and grocery shopping. That was the extent of my life. No hobbies, no friends outside of Melissa's social circle, no interests that were truly mine. I'd decided to change that completely. First, I'd joined the Young Professionals Network, a business networking group that met twice a month. The meetings were held at upscale restaurants or rooftop bars. business casual dress code, talks from successful entrepreneurs and executives, followed by networking time. My first meeting had been intimidating. Everyone had seemed so polished, so confident, so connected. I'd almost left twice before forcing myself to stay. I'd introduced myself to a group discussing commercial real estate. "Hi, I'm David Richardson, senior accountant at Morrison & Associates. I specialize in business valuations and tax strategy for real estate investors." The conversation had flowed from there. Turns out, real estate investors need accountants. Within 20 minutes, I'd exchanged business cards with 3 people who wanted to discuss potential consulting work. That first meeting had led to regular attendance. By the 3rd meeting, I'd known several people by name. By the 6th, I'd been comfortable enough to give a short talk on tax strategies for property investors. "You're a natural at this networking thing," Victoria had told me after one event. We'd met at the 3rd meeting. Her first time attending. My 3rd. "Thanks. It's actually pretty fun once you get over the initial awkwardness." Most people never get over the awkwardness. They show up once, feel uncomfortable, and never come back. The fact that you push through says something about your character. That had been the beginning of our friendship. We'd discovered we had similar professional interests. She needed accounting advice for her investment properties. I needed to understand real estate investing for my clients. We'd started having coffee meetings every few weeks to discuss mutual business interests. Those coffee meetings had gradually expanded to include Robert, Victoria's husband. The 3 of us had developed a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared interests. But networking was only one piece. I'd also developed personal hobbies that had nothing to do with work. Photography had started as a whim. I'd seen an ad for a beginner photography course at the community college and signed up on impulse. 8 weeks, Tuesday evenings, $200. The instructor, James Kowalski, was a retired photographer who'd worked for National Geographic. His teaching style was hands-on and intensive. Photography is about seeing light and composition. Anyone can press a button. Artists understand why they're pressing it. I'd bought a decent camera, not professional level, but good enough to learn on. $1,500 for the body and a versatile lens. I'd started carrying it everywhere, practicing. By week 4 of the class, I'd been genuinely good. I had an eye for composition, for finding interesting angles. My shots of urban architecture had impressed James enough that he'd featured several in the class exhibition. "You should pursue this seriously," James had told me. "You've got natural talent." "It's just a hobby," I'd said, "for now. But hobbies become passions, become careers. Don't limit yourself." Photography had given me a reason to explore the city, to visit new neighborhoods, new parks, new landmarks, to see beauty in everyday things, to create something that was entirely mine. The wine tasting club had been Victoria's suggestion. "You said you wanted to develop refined tastes. Wine knowledge is practical, social, and genuinely enjoyable. Plus, it's a great conversation topic at business events." I'd joined Pacific Coast Wine Society, a group that met monthly to taste wines from different regions. $50 per session, which included 6 wine samples and light appetizers. The group was mixed: lawyers, doctors, business owners, retirees, people who appreciated good wine and good conversation. I'd learned about varietals, terroirs, vintages, learned how to describe flavors beyond "I like it" or "I don't like it." Learned about wine regions in California, France, Italy, Spain. "You're getting good at this," Thomas, a regular member, had commented during my 3rd session. "Most newcomers can't distinguish between Cabernet and Merlot. You're already talking about tannin structure and fruit-forward profiles." "I've been studying," I'd admitted, "reading wine blogs, watching YouTube tutorials, practicing at home. It shows. You should come to our advanced tasting next month. It's more expensive, but worth it." I'd gone. $80 per session, but featured rare wines worth hundreds of dollars per bottle. The conversations had been more sophisticated, the knowledge deeper. I'd felt challenged and engaged in a way I hadn't felt in years. All of these activities, the gym, the networking, the photography, the wine tasting. They'd served multiple purposes. Obviously, they'd made me more interesting. I had things to talk about that weren't just work and home. I could discuss wine vintages with clients, share photography on social media, network effectively at business events. But more importantly, they'd given me a life that belonged to me, not to Melissa, not to our marriage, to me as an individual. For 12 years, my identity had been Melissa's husband and accountant. Now, my identity was David Richardson, photographer, wine enthusiast, fitness advocate, networker, senior partner, friend to interesting people. I'd rebuilt myself from the ground up. And in doing so, I'd realized something crucial. Melissa had been right that I was replaceable, but she'd been wrong about who would be replaced. Phase 2 of my transformation had also included a complete wardrobe overhaul, and I'd approached it with the same intensity as the fitness journey. Stefan at Belmont Menswear had become not just my personal shopper, but something of a style mentor. Our first session had been overwhelming. I'd walked into the boutique wearing khakis from Target and a polo shirt that had seen better days. "First thing," Stefan had said, looking me over with a critical eye, "we're starting from zero. Everything you're wearing right now, donate it. Keep maybe 1 or 2 items for yard work. Everything else goes." Everything? Everything. Your clothes are telling the world you don't care about yourself. They're baggy where they should be fitted, cheap where quality matters, and outdated in cut and style. If you're serious about transformation, we start fresh. We'd spent that first session just talking about style philosophy, about how clothes communicate status, confidence, attention to detail, about the difference between fashion, which changes constantly, and style, which is timeless. "You're not trying to look trendy," Stefan had explained. "You're trying to look like a man who has his life together. That means classic cuts, quality fabrics, proper fit, simple but elevated." He'd taken measurements, not just chest and waist, but shoulder width, arm length, rise, inseam. Measurements I didn't even know existed. "You're between sizes in most brands," he'd noted. "That's actually common, which is why everything you buy here will be tailored. Nothing off the rack fits perfectly. Tailoring is what makes the difference between looking okay and looking exceptional." The suits had come first. Stefan had steered me toward classic styles, 2-button, notch lapel, single vent. Nothing too fashion-forward, nothing that would look dated in 5 years. "Navy first," he'd said, pulling a suit from the rack. "Navy is your foundation. Works for everything from business meetings to weddings to funerals. Versatile, professional, flattering." The navy suit was made from Super 120's wool, a quality level I hadn't known existed. It felt substantial but not heavy. The color was deep and rich. "Try this on, we'll assess the fit." I'd changed in the fitting room. The suit had looked better than anything I'd ever worn, even without alterations. Stefan had assessed it with a critical eye, pinching excess fabric at the back, checking the sleeve length, examining the trouser break. "We need to take in the waist about an inch, shorten the sleeves half an inch, taper the trousers from the knee down, let out the seat just a touch. You're building muscle, so we want room for growth. Should be ready in 2 weeks." We'd repeated the process with 2 more suits, charcoal gray and light gray, each one assessed, marked for alterations, scheduled for completion. Then the dress shirts. Stefan had pulled 10 different styles: white, light blue, light pink, lavender, subtle patterns. "White is your interview shirt," he'd explained. "Everything else is your everyday rotation. Shirts should coordinate with your suits, but also work independently with trousers and blazers." We'd selected fabrics: Egyptian cotton, Italian broadcloth, performance blends that resisted wrinkles. All had to be tailored. Even dress shirts off the rack didn't fit perfectly. Shoes had been an education. I'd always thought dress shoes were just black or brown. Stefan had shown me there were dozens of styles, each with specific uses. Oxford for formal business, Derby for slightly less formal, monk strap for creative business settings, loafers for business casual, Chelsea boots for casual sophisticated. We'd settled on 4 pairs: black Oxford cap toes, dark brown Darbys, burgundy monk straps, and brown suede Chelsea boots. Each pair cost between $300 and $500. Quality shoes last 10 years if you maintain them properly, Stefan had said. Cheap shoes last 6 months and look terrible after 2. The economics actually favor quality. The accessories had been the finishing touches. A proper leather belt, not the 1-inch elastic-backed thing I'd been wearing. Real leather goods from Italy. Dark brown to match most of my shoes, black for the black Oxfords. A leather briefcase to replace my nylon laptop bag. This is your work accessory. It should communicate professionalism and success. A proper watch. Stefan had taken me to a watch specialist in the store. You don't need a Rolex, the specialist had said. That's often trying too hard. What you need is something Swiss-made, automatic movement, classic design, something that says, I appreciate quality, without screaming, look at my expensive watch. We'd selected a Tissot automatic with a leather strap. Not cheap, $1,500, but not outrageous either. Classic design, visible through the transparent case back, elegant and understated. Casual wear had been another session entirely. Stefan had taught me about the concept of elevated casual, clothes that looked relaxed but were clearly intentional and high quality. Dark jeans without distressing or excessive details, made from Japanese denim that actually fit properly, not too skinny, not too baggy, with a slight taper from knee to ankle. Henley shirts in neutral colors, crew neck sweaters in cashmere, button-down shirts in casual fabrics like Oxford cloth and chambray, a leather jacket that had cost more than my car payment but looked perfect. For outerwear, we'd selected a navy wool pea coat and a tan trench coat, classic styles that had been fashionable for 50 years and would remain fashionable for 50 more. The goal, Stefan had summarized as we'd reviewed my complete wardrobe, is for people to think that's a well-dressed man without being able to identify what specifically makes you well-dressed. It should look effortless. That effortlessness takes effort to achieve, but that's the point. The total cost had been staggering, almost $12,000 when everything was tallied. Suits, shirts, shoes, accessories, alterations, casual wear. Melissa had noticed the credit card bill. $12,000 on clothes? David, we can't afford this. I can afford it, I'd corrected. I got a significant raise. This is an investment in my career. An investment? It's vanity. No, vanity is spending $15,000 a year on fast fashion that looks cheap and falls apart. This is buying quality pieces that will last years and make me look like someone worth promoting. You already got promoted. And I want to keep getting promoted. Senior partner now, maybe managing partner in 5 years. Then maybe I leave and start my own firm. Looking the part matters. She'd shaken her head but hadn't argued further. The truth was, I could afford it. My salary increase from the promotion had been $40,000 annually. After taxes, that was about $25,000 in additional take-home pay. $12,000 on clothes was less than half my first year's raise, and the impact had been immediate. Within 2 weeks of getting my tailored suits back, I'd started getting treated differently at work. Clients took me more seriously. Colleagues showed more respect. People assumed I was successful, and that assumption created reality. You look like $1 million, Richard Morrison had said when I'd shown up to an important client meeting in my navy suit with perfect fit, crisp white shirt, burgundy silk tie, and polished black Oxfords. Thank you, Richard. Seriously, David, the clients notice this stuff. When you look successful, they trust you more. Keep it up. The new wardrobe had been more than clothes. It had been armor, confidence you could wear, a visual representation of the internal changes I'd been making. Every morning, putting on a perfectly tailored suit had reminded me, you're not the old David anymore. You're someone better, someone who values himself, someone who's not replaceable. That reminder had been worth every dollar. While I was transforming myself physically and socially, I was also preparing financially. I'd met with 3 different divorce attorneys, not to file yet, just to understand my options and prepare. The advice had been consistent: document everything, protect what you can, and be strategic about timing. I'd started documenting. Screenshots of Melissa's spending. She'd spent over $15,000 in the last year on clothes, shoes, handbags, and online shopping. Meanwhile, I'd been contributing significantly more to household expenses. I'd also started redirecting money. Nothing illegal, I wasn't hiding assets. But I'd increased my 401k contributions to the maximum allowed. That money was pre-tax, which meant our household income appeared lower, and 401k assets received special treatment in divorce proceedings. I'd opened a separate checking account, just in my name, not joint, and started depositing my bonuses there. Again, perfectly legal. Bonuses were considered separate property if kept separate. By month 4 of my transformation, I had about $35,000 in that separate account, money that Melissa didn't know existed. I'd also gotten a full appraisal of our house, knew exactly what it was worth and what we owed. I'd organized all our financial documents, every bank statement, every credit card bill, every investment account statement. I'd taken photographs of everything in our house, especially items I'd owned before the marriage or had inherited. Those were separate property, not subject to division. I was preparing for war, but Melissa still thought we were at peace. His name was Richard Hartley, 62 years old, partner at Hartley, Morrison & Chen, specialized in high net worth divorces and complex asset division. He didn't look like a shark, but I'd read enough about his cases to know he was one of the best. "Mr. Richardson," he'd said when we'd met for our 4th consultation, "you've done excellent preparation work. Most clients come to me in crisis mode with no documentation and no plan. You're approaching this strategically." "I want to make sure I'm protected," I'd said. "My wife thinks I'm replaceable. I'm going to show her the cost of that assumption." "Tell me about your assets again." I'd gone through everything: the house, the retirement accounts, the savings, my separate account, even my new wardrobe and gym membership. "And your wife's contribution to marital assets?" "Minimal. She worked as a dental hygienist for the first 2 years of our marriage. Made about $30,000 a year, quit 10 years ago to focus on personal projects. Has contributed almost nothing financially since then. Her retirement account has barely grown. She spends about $15,000 to $20,000 a year on personal expenses, clothes, shopping, lunches with friends." Richard had made notes. "That spending pattern will matter. California is a community property state, but judges have discretion. If we can show she's been financially irresponsible while you've been the primary earner, it helps." "What are we looking at for division?" "Worst case scenario, 50-50 split of everything. She'd get about $300,000 in assets. Best case, maybe 60-40 in your favor. The house is the complicated part. Neither of you can probably afford it alone after a split." "I don't want the house," I'd said. "Too many memories. I'd rather sell it and split the proceeds." "That makes it cleaner." "What about alimony?" "She's going to ask for it, isn't she?" "Almost certainly. She hasn't worked in 10 years. Court might award temporary support while she gets back on her feet. Maybe 2 to 3 years of payments. Could be $1,500 to $2,000 a month." I'd done the math. That was potentially $70,000 over 3 years, on top of half the assets. "How do I minimize that?" "Prove she's capable of working. Prove she's been spending frivolously. Show that she made choices that kept her out of the workforce. And most importantly, don't give her ammunition." "Ammunition?" "Stay clean, no affairs, no hiding assets illegally, no giving her grounds to claim misconduct. The cleaner you are, the better your position." I'd met Victoria Chen at a networking event in month 5 of my transformation. She'd been standing near the bar, wearing a tailored black suit that probably cost more than my first car, talking to a group of real estate investors about market trends in the Bay Area. I'd been drawn to the conversation, Part of my new strategy was to actually engage with people instead of standing awkwardly in corners. "Excuse me?" I'd interjected during a pause. I couldn't help overhearing. "You mentioned the Santa Clara market is overvalued. Are you suggesting a correction is coming?" Victoria had turned to look at me. 35, maybe 36. Auburn hair pulled back in a professional style. Sharp green eyes that assessed me in about 2 seconds. "Not a correction," she'd said. "A rebalancing. There's a difference. The market's not going to crash. There's too much demand. But the rate of appreciation will slow. Properties that were gaining 10% annually will probably flatten to 3 or 4%. Which makes them less attractive as investments but still solid holds." "Exactly." She'd smiled. "You're in real estate?" "Accounting, but I work with several real estate investment firms, Morrison and Associates. I've heard of them. Good reputation." She'd extended her hand. "Victoria Chen. I run Chen Investment Properties." I'd shaken her hand. "David Richardson, senior accountant, aspiring wine expert, and amateur photographer." She'd laughed. "That's quite a combination." We'd talked for 20 minutes, about real estate, about photography, she was also a hobbyist, about the networking event itself. She'd been easy to talk to, intelligent, confident, successful, the kind of woman who knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to go after it. "We should continue this conversation sometime," she'd said, as the event was winding down. "I'm always looking for good accountants to work with, and I'd love to see your photography." "I'd like that," I'd said, meaning it. We'd exchanged business cards. She'd texted me the next day. "Coffee next week? I'm serious about potentially working together. Also want to hear more about your wine-tasting hobby." I'd agreed. That coffee had turned into lunch the following week, then drinks the week after that, then dinner, all perfectly professional, all completely platonic. Victoria was married, happily, she'd mentioned several times. Her husband Robert was a cardiothoracic surgeon. They had no kids by choice, both focused on their careers. "Robert and I are partners," she'd explained over dinner one night. "We respect each other, push each other to be better. That's what a good marriage should be." I'd thought about Melissa, about being called replaceable. "Not all marriages work that way," I'd said. "No," Victoria had agreed, reading between the lines. "They don't, but they should." Victoria had become a genuine friend, someone I could talk to about business, about life, about the transformation I was going through. "You're different than you were 6 months ago," she'd observed one evening. We'd been at a wine bar discussing a potential consulting project. "More confident, more present. Whatever you're doing, it's working." "Thank you. That means a lot." "Are things better at home?" I'd hesitated. We'd never explicitly discussed my marriage problems, but Victoria was perceptive. "No," I'd admitted. "They're not. In fact, they're probably going to get worse before they get better." "Divorce?" "Eventually. I'm preparing." She'd nodded, not judging. "If you need advice, not legal advice, but practical advice from someone who's watched friends go through it, I'm here." "I appreciate that." "And David? When you're ready to start over, you're going to be one of the most eligible men in this city. Just so you know." It was the first time someone had said something like that to me. The first time I'd felt like I was worth wanting. 6 months into my transformation, Melissa had finally noticed something was seriously different. I'd come home from the gym one Saturday morning. She'd been in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, coffee in hand. "You're never home anymore," she'd said without looking up. "I'm at the gym every morning, same schedule I've had for months." "I mean after work. You're always at networking events or wine tastings or photography classes. It's like you're avoiding being here." "I'm not avoiding anything. I'm just building a life that includes more than work and this house." A life that doesn't include me, apparently. I'd poured myself coffee, stayed calm. "You're welcome to join me at any of these things. I've invited you multiple times. I don't want to go to boring networking events with your work friends." They're not boring. And they're not just work friends. They're interesting people doing interesting things. But if you're not interested, that's fine. I'll keep going without you. She'd finally looked up from her phone, really looked at me, noticed the muscle definition, the new haircut I'd gotten, the expensive casual clothes. You look different. I've lost 30 pounds, built some muscle, changed my wardrobe. You haven't noticed? I noticed you were going to the gym. I didn't realize it was this dramatic. 6 months of consistent work tends to have dramatic results. Why are you doing all this? I'd set down my coffee and looked at her directly. Because I wasn't happy with who I was becoming. I was boring, predictable, adequate. I decided to change that. Her face had gone pale. Those were the exact words she'd used 6 months ago. David, don't worry about it, Melissa. I'm not upset. You were right. I was replaceable. So I'm making myself irreplaceable. For myself, not for you. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done being background furniture in my own life. I'm done settling for adequate. Are you saying you want a divorce? I'd paused, let the moment hang. I'm saying things need to change. Whether that change includes staying married is up to both of us. She'd stared at me, speechless. I'd grabbed my gym bag and left for a photography walk. Left her sitting there with her coffee, finally realizing that the boring, predictable husband she'd dismissed was gone. The invitation had arrived in October. You're invited to the annual Riverside Country Club Christmas Gala, December 15th, 7 p.m. Dinner, dancing, and holiday celebration. +1 welcome. Melissa's parents were members at Riverside. Every year, they invited us to the Christmas Gala. Every year, it was the same crowd, Melissa's family friends, her book club group, people we'd known for years, people who'd watched me be the boring, predictable husband for over a decade. We have the Christmas party in December, Melissa had mentioned one evening at dinner. You're going, right? Probably not, I'd said. I have a lot going on in December. David, you have to go. My parents will be upset if we're not there. Then you go. I'll send my regards to your parents. I can't show up alone. What will people think? They'll think your husband had other commitments, which is true. What commitments? I'd shrugged. Work events, friend gatherings? I'm not sure yet, but I'm not interested in spending an evening being paraded around as your adequate, replaceable husband. She'd flinched. I never said that to your face. No, you said it to your friends while I was in the hallway. Close enough. That was months ago. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. And honestly, Melissa, you were right. I was replaceable, past tense. But I'm not anymore. And I'm not interested in pretending we have a happy marriage in front of your parents' country club friends. So you're just going to embarrass me by not showing up? I said I probably won't go. I didn't say definitely. Maybe I'll surprise you. I'd left the table, leaving her stewing in her own anxiety. The truth was, I'd already decided to go to that party. But not as Melissa's boring husband. I'd go as the man I'd become. And I'd bring someone who'd make it very clear that I was no longer replaceable. I'd called Victoria 2 weeks before the Christmas party. I need a favor, I'd said. It's going to sound crazy. I'm listening, she'd said, amused. There's a Christmas gala at Riverside Country Club on December 15th. My wife and I are invited. Well, technically we're both invited, but we're essentially separated even though we still live in the same house. It's complicated. Okay? I want to go to this party. And I want to bring a date who will make my wife realize exactly how much she took me for granted. Victoria had been quiet for a moment. You want me to be your date? Yes. I know it's weird. I know you're married. But Robert could come too, as your +1 technically. I just need someone who looks like they belong with the new version of me. Someone confident, successful, impressive. Someone who makes it clear I'm not the boring guy my wife thinks I am. This is definitely the most interesting favor anyone's asked me this year. I know it's a lot. I'll do it. Really? Really? First of all, you're my friend. Second, I actually think this sounds fun in a chaotic way. Third, Robert will think it's hilarious. He loves drama as long as he's not directly involved. You're sure? Completely sure. But I'm going to need details about this party. Dress code, expected attendance, who's going to be there, and exactly what message you want to send. The message is, I'm not replaceable. I've replaced you. Oh, this is going to be amazing. The week before the party, Victoria and I had lunch to coordinate. So, Robert's coming too? I'd asked. He is. He thinks this is the funniest thing he's heard all month. He's treating it like we're going to perform in a play. How do you want to handle it? Should you arrive with Robert and I just happen to be there? No, Victoria had said. We're committing to the drama. You and I arrive together. Robert arrives separately about 20 minutes later, mingles with different people, and then finds us. Plays it completely casual like he's totally fine with his wife being your date. Your husband is a very secure man. He really is. Plus, he knows this is performance art, not actual relationship drama. What are you wearing? I bought a new dress specifically for this. Midnight blue designer, shows just enough to make people look but stays completely classy. Diamond jewelry. Real diamonds, not costume. I'm going to look like someone who belongs at a charity gala in Manhattan, not a country club in the suburbs. You're really committing to this. David, you're my friend. You've been treated poorly by someone who should have valued you. This is the least I can do. Plus, honestly, I'm excited. This is going to be the most interesting holiday party I attend all season. December 15th arrived. I'd picked up Victoria at her house at 6:30. Robert had answered the door, grinning. Take care of my wife, he'd said, shaking my hand. And make sure this is worth the story I'll get to tell at dinner parties for years. I'll do my best, I'd promised. Victoria had appeared at the top of the stairs, and I genuinely caught my breath. The dress was stunning. Midnight blue with a subtle shimmer, fitted perfectly to her figure. A single strand of diamonds around her neck. Robert had confirmed they were real, worth about $40,000. Matching diamond bracelet. Her auburn hair was styled in an elegant updo that probably took hours. She looked like she should be at a Met Gala, not a suburban country club. Too much? She'd asked, seeing my expression. Perfect, I'd said. Absolutely perfect. We'd driven to Riverside Country Club in my car, which I'd also upgraded 3 months ago, traded in my 10-year-old sedan for a BMW 5 Series, midnight blue, same as Victoria's dress. We'd coordinated. The parking lot was already filling up when we'd arrived. I'd recognized several cars, Melissa's parents' Mercedes, Katie's SUV, Jennifer's luxury crossover. Ready? Victoria had asked. Ready. We'd walked up to the entrance together, her hand resting lightly on my arm. The doorman had greeted us, taken our coats, and then we'd walked into the ballroom. The effect had been immediate. Conversations had paused, heads had turned, people had noticed. First, they'd noticed Victoria. Impossible not to notice her. Then they'd noticed me. Then they'd done double takes, trying to reconcile the man in the Tom Ford suit with the boring guy they'd known for years. And then, they'd noticed us together, and the whispers had started. Is that David Richardson? Who's that woman? Where's Melissa? I'd spotted Melissa immediately. She'd been near the bar with Katie, Jennifer, and Morgan, holding a champagne glass, laughing at something someone had said. And then her eyes had found us. Her face had gone white. The champagne glass had tilted dangerously in her hand, liquid sloshing almost to the rim before she'd caught herself. Katie had noticed Melissa's reaction, followed her gaze, and her mouth had literally fallen open. Oh, this is going better than I expected, Victoria had murmured. Just wait, I'd said. We'd walked through the ballroom, slowly, deliberately. People had approached us, curious. David, we haven't seen you in ages. And who is this lovely woman? This is Victoria Chen, I'd said, introducing her to Tom and Sandra Morrison, friends of Melissa's parents. Victoria runs Chen Investment Properties. We've been working together on some consulting projects. It's wonderful to meet you, Victoria had said, her smile warm and genuine. David's told me so much about his friends here. You look familiar, Sandra had said. Have we met before? I don't think so. Though I'm in real estate, so perhaps we've crossed paths at industry events. Maybe. You're in commercial real estate? Residential investment properties, primarily in the Bay Area, though I've been looking at opportunities here as well. The conversation had continued, pleasant and professional, but I'd seen Sandra's eyes keep flicking between Victoria and me, trying to figure out what our relationship was. More people had approached, each conversation similar. Curiosity about Victoria, surprise at my appearance, subtle probing questions about where Melissa was. She's here somewhere, I'd said vaguely. We arrived separately. After about 20 minutes, Robert had arrived. I'd spotted him across the room and caught his eye. He'd grinned and made his way over. Victoria, he'd said, kissing her cheek. You look incredible. Hi, David. Good to see you. Robert, good to see you too. Thanks for letting me borrow your wife for the evening. Anytime. She's been excited about this party all week. Something about Christmas decorations? Victoria had laughed. The decorations are beautiful. Come on, let me show you the tree. They'd walked off together, leaving me alone, and giving Melissa the opportunity she'd been waiting for. Melissa had approached within 60 seconds of Victoria and Robert walking away. Her face was flushed, her jaw tight. Who is that woman? She'd hissed, keeping her voice low enough that nearby people couldn't hear. Victoria Chen. I introduced you at our 4th of July party last year. You talked to her for about 90 seconds before deciding she was boring and walking away. I don't remember her. I'm not surprised. You don't remember most of the people I introduce you to. Is she your date? She's my friend and colleague. We work together on several consulting projects. Don't lie to me, David. You brought another woman to this party. What message exactly are you trying to send? The same message you sent 6 months ago, that I'm replaceable. Her face had gone even redder. I apologized for that. No, you didn't. You said, that was months ago and I didn't mean it. Neither of those is an apology. Fine. I'm sorry. Are you happy? I'm sorry I said you were replaceable. I don't need your apology, Melissa. I needed you to actually mean it. But you didn't. You still don't. You think I'm the same boring guy you've been married to for 12 years. So you're what? Trying to make me jealous by bringing some woman here? I brought Victoria because she's my friend, and I wanted company at a party I knew you'd be attending. The fact that it bothers you says more about you than me. Of course it bothers me. You brought another woman to a party where all our friends and family are. Our friends and family? Melissa, these are your parents' friends, your book club friends, people who've watched you treat me like furniture for years. Maybe it's good for them to see that furniture can be replaced too. Are you having an affair with her? No. I don't believe you. I don't care. Victoria is happily married. Her husband is here tonight. You'd know that if you'd paid attention when I introduced them at the 4th of July party. Then why is she your date? Because I asked her to be. Because I wanted to show up here looking like someone who has options. Someone who isn't just the boring husband who shows up and stands in the corner while you drink champagne with your friends. So this whole thing, the gym, the clothes, the new car, the attitude, this is all about embarrassing me? No, Melissa. This is all about showing myself that I'm worth more than how you treated me. You're just collateral damage. Melissa had stormed off after our conversation, rejoining her friends who'd clearly been watching from across the room. I'd found Victoria and Robert near the Christmas tree. That looked intense, Robert had observed. She asked if we were having an affair, I'd said. Classic, Robert had laughed. What did you tell her? The truth. That you're here and she didn't notice. Perfect. Should I go introduce myself? If you want to add fuel to the fire, absolutely. Robert had grinned and walked directly over to Melissa's group. Victoria and I had watched from a distance as Robert had introduced himself to Melissa, Katie, Jennifer, and Morgan. Had watched their faces as he'd explained he was Victoria's husband. Had watched the confusion ripple through them as they'd tried to figure out what was happening. "Your husband is enjoying this way too much," I'd said to Victoria. "He really is. He says it's like watching a nature documentary, observing human behavior in their natural habitat." That's actually pretty accurate. Dinner had been called. Seated dinner, place cards at tables. I'd been seated at my usual table, with Melissa, her parents, and several family friends. Victoria and Robert had been seated several tables away, having arrived separately and not been included in the formal guest list adjustments. This meant I'd be sitting next to Melissa for a 2-hour dinner. "This is going to be fun," I'd muttered. Melissa's mother, Patricia, had been the first to comment as we'd sat down for dinner. "David, you look wonderful. You've lost weight?" "About 35 pounds. Been working with a trainer." "It shows. You look 10 years younger. And that suit is very sharp." "Thank you." Patricia had glanced at Melissa, then back at me. "We were wondering if you and Melissa were coming tonight. She said you might not make it." "I almost didn't. Work has been busy. But I decided to make time." "And you brought a friend?" "Victoria Chen. She's a real estate investor I work with. Very successful. Her husband's here too, Robert. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon at St. Mary's." "How lovely. We should invite them to sit with us for drinks after dinner." Melissa had choked on her wine. "I'm sure they'd enjoy that," I'd said pleasantly. The dinner had continued. Salad course, main course, choice of filet or salmon, dessert. Throughout it all, Melissa had been silent, except when directly addressed, her face tight with suppressed anger. Her father, Gerald, had asked about work. "Still at Morrison and Associates?" "Yes, sir. Made senior partner last month, actually." "Congratulations! That's wonderful news. I didn't know you were up for promotion." It happened rather quickly. They created the position specifically for me after I brought in several new high-value clients. "That's quite an achievement." "Thank you. It came with a significant raise and better benefits. Made all the extra work worth it." Melissa's head had snapped toward me. "You made senior partner? When were you going to tell me?" "I told you last month. You were on your phone and said, 'That's nice,' without looking up." Her face had flushed. Patricia had looked between us, clearly sensing tension. The rest of the dinner had been strained. I'd made pleasant conversation with others at the table while Melissa had sat in near silence. After dinner, people had mingled. The bar had opened fully. During dinner, it had been wine service only. Now people were getting cocktails, gathering in groups, talking and laughing. I'd found Victoria and Robert at one of the high-top tables near the windows. "How was dinner?" Victoria had asked. "Painful for Melissa. Pleasant for me." "Good. That's the goal." "Oh, and your mother-in-law invited Robert and me to join your table for drinks." "I know. She did it right in front of Melissa. I thought Melissa was going to choke." Robert had laughed. "This really is better than I expected." We'd been joined at the table by Patricia and Gerald, who'd brought drinks. "Victoria, Robert, so lovely to meet you properly," Patricia had said. "David tells us you're in real estate, Victoria?" "I am. I run an investment property company. We focus on residential properties in high-growth areas." "Fascinating. And Robert, you're a surgeon?" "Cardiothoracic surgery at St. Mary's. Though honestly, Victoria's work is far more interesting than mine. I just cut people open and fix their hearts. She deals with market analysis, property management, investor relations, much more complex." "You're too modest," Victoria had said, squeezing his hand. "Robert saves lives. I just make money." "Both important," Gerald had said. "Though I have to say, you two seem very well matched." "We like to think so," Robert had agreed. "We've been married 8 years. No kids by choice. We're both too focused on our careers. But we support each other completely." He'd said it so naturally, so easily. The perfect contrast to whatever Gerald and Patricia had been observing in Melissa's and my relationship. Patricia had glanced across the room to where Melissa was standing with her friends, all of them watching our table. "David," Patricia had said carefully, "is everything all right between you and Melissa?" I'd paused, considering how to answer. "I think Melissa and I are going through some changes right now, figuring out what we want from our marriage." "I see." Patricia had looked concerned. "If there's anything Gerald and I can do to help, I appreciate that, but I think this is something Melissa and I need to work through ourselves." The conversation had moved on, but the seed had been planted. Melissa's parents now knew something was wrong, and they'd seen me with Victoria and Robert, seen me confident and well-dressed and articulate, and probably wondered why their daughter seemed so unhappy. Around 10 p.m., Robert had said his goodbyes, early surgery the next morning, and Victoria and I had walked him out to the parking lot. "That was fantastic," Robert had said, shaking my hand. "Thank you for including me in this absolutely bizarre social experiment." "Thank you for being such a good sport," I'd said. "Anytime. Victoria, I'll see you at home. Don't stay out too late." He'd kissed her cheek and driven off. Victoria and I had walked back inside to find Melissa waiting in the lobby. "I'd like to speak to my husband alone," Melissa had said to Victoria. "Of course," Victoria had said gracefully. "David, I'll be at the bar when you're ready." She'd walked away, leaving Melissa and me in the lobby. "Are you trying to destroy our marriage?" Melissa had asked, her voice shaking. "I'm trying to show you who I've become while you weren't paying attention. By bringing another woman to humiliate me in front of my parents and friends? Victoria didn't humiliate you. Your own behavior over the past year did that. I just provided context. What's that supposed to mean? It means people have noticed how you treat me, Melissa, how you dismiss me, how you talk about me to your friends. Your mother asked me tonight if everything was okay between us. She's noticed. Your father's noticed. Everyone's noticed that you don't respect your husband." That's not true. It is true. And bringing Victoria here, with her husband, by the way, making it absolutely clear there's nothing inappropriate happening, has made people wonder why my wife is so upset about me having a professional relationship with a successful, interesting woman. She's not just a colleague. The way you look at her, the way I look at her, is how I used to look at you. With respect, with interest, with appreciation. But you haven't given me a reason to look at you that way in years. So this is my fault? You're blameless? I'm not blameless. I let myself become boring. I let myself become the kind of husband you could call replaceable without feeling bad about it. But I've changed that. I'm not boring anymore. I'm not replaceable anymore. And if you can't see that, if you can't appreciate it, then maybe we don't have a future together. Are you asking for a divorce? I'm saying we need to figure out if we still want to be married. Because right now, Melissa, I'm not sure we do. She'd stared at me, tears starting to form. I don't want to lose you. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you called me replaceable. I'd walked away, back to the bar where Victoria was waiting. "Everything okay?" she'd asked. "Everything's fine. Ready to go?" "Ready." We'd left together, leaving Melissa standing in the lobby, finally understanding what she'd lost. The Monday after the Christmas party, I'd come home from work to find Melissa waiting in the living room. "We need to talk," she'd said. "Okay." I've been doing a lot of thinking since Saturday night. About us, about our marriage, about what you said. And you're right. I haven't been a good wife. I've taken you for granted. I've dismissed you and treated you like you weren't important. And I'm sorry. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say, Melissa? That one apology fixes 12 years of being treated like I don't matter? I want you to tell me what you want. Do you want to fix this marriage or not? I'd sat down across from her. I don't know. A year ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. 6 months ago, maybe. But now, I'm not sure. Why? Because I've realized something. I've been so focused on being a good husband that I forgot to be a person who wants to be married. I changed everything about myself, my body, my wardrobe, my social life, my career, and you didn't notice until another woman was standing next to me. That tells me you don't actually want me. You just want the stability I provide. That's not true, isn't it? Be honest with yourself, Melissa. If I had stayed exactly the same, boring, predictable, adequate, would you have ever appreciated me? Or would you have just kept taking me for granted until one of us finally called it quits? She'd been silent. That's what I thought, I'd said. So what now? Now we figure out if we actually want to be married or if we're just staying together out of inertia. How do we figure that out? Couples therapy, if you're willing. She'd nodded. I'm willing. Dr. Amanda Torres was a marriage therapist recommended by Richard Hartley, my divorce attorney. She's excellent, Richard had said. Fair to both parties. And if things don't work out, her notes can be helpful in divorce proceedings. I'd appreciated the strategic thinking. Melissa and I had sat in Dr. Torres's office 2 weeks after the Christmas party. Comfortable chairs, soft lighting, box of tissues on the table. So, Dr. Torres had begun, tell me why you're here. Melissa had looked at me. I'd gestured for her to start. We've been married for 12 years, Melissa had said, and lately things have been difficult. We've grown apart. David's changed a lot in the past 6 months, and I think I'm having trouble adjusting. Tell me about those changes, Dr. Torres had said to me. I lost weight, started dressing better, developed new hobbies and interests, made new friends, got promoted at work, essentially became a different person than I was a yee. That reminder had been worth every dollar. And now, 2 years later, standing on Victoria's deck watching the sunset, I didn't need the reminder anymore. I knew my worth. And I knew that Melissa calling me replaceable had been the best thing that ever happened to me, because it had forced me to become irreplaceable.